Good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Rosie O'Brien Boytek, and I'm the Assistant Executive Director of the Connecticut Association of Schools. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our continued Teachers Forum for Special Education and Related Services. Today's session is Self-Care Tips and Tricks, How to Be Your Best Self for Your Students. We at CAS are very excited to collaborate with the Office of Early Childhood, the Connecticut State Department of Education, the Regional Education Service Center's RESC Alliance to support the needs of all of Connecticut's youngest learners, including children with special needs and other vulnerable populations, by sharing with you the most current information as well as research and best practices for early childhood education. There's so much to think about as we design and implement teaching and learning during the 2021 school year, especially for our youngest students across the state. So we're really glad that you're here today with us. Just a couple of quick reminders. Everyone has been muted to begin with, but once you get into the breakout rooms, please unmute yourself to talk with each other. If possible, please turn your video on, as it's nice to be able to see everyone, especially when we're working in small groups. When you're working as a whole group, please ask questions in the chat or raise your hand with the button at the bottom of the screen to be recognized. Also, please use the chat feature to ask questions, share ideas, and let us know if you experience technical problems during this Zoom meeting, as we will be monitoring the chat. However, when you're in the breakout rooms, the chat feature is only seen by the people in your breakout rooms. So if you have questions or you need help when you're in the breakout room, please use the help button and one of the hosts will respond. This webinar is being recorded, but only during the whole group activities. We're unable to record the small group conversations during the breakout room portion of the webinar. However, the rest of the webinar will be recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the CAS, OEC, CSDE, and RESC websites. So please be sure the link to this webinar please be sure to share the link with this webinar with your colleagues once it's posted. Again, I would like to welcome and thank all of you for joining us today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our facilitator for this continued conversation, CREC Education Specialist, Claudia Elfridge. Welcome, Claudia.
Welcome, everyone. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone that has come here today to take some time to focus on yourselves, and in doing that, really be there for your students, and then be there for yourself as well. So my name is Claudia Elfridge. I am an ed specialist for CREC. I'm a former elementary and special education teacher before coming to this role a few years ago. My areas of expertise are PBIS, MTSS, and behavior, as well as autism, transition, and self-care and wellness. So I come here with a lot of passion in this area, especially recently, given during the current times. So my goal is for you to really take the next 45 minutes to an hour and really be able to focus on yourselves, and then with that being said, be able to bring that knowledge and that awareness to your students as well. And I'm going to get ready to just share here with you. Can see that okay, Jean? Okay. All right, so in this session today, we're going to learn how to support ourselves in designing and maintaining a healthy self-care routine. So again, we are putting ourselves first so we can fill our own cup so that we can be there for the students that we serve. So again, we're really taking at least the first 2/3 of this session today to really focus on ourselves, and then toward the end we'll talk about how all of that learning will help us with our students at the same time. We'll make sure that we're going to focus on creating empathy for ourselves and for others, while focusing and honoring all of our unique perspectives, cultures, values, and abilities here today. By the time you leave here today, you will have created, or at least drafted, a self-care plan for yourselves that you will then begin to plan how you will share that with your students. We will do a really quick social emotional learning activity that I love to do with adults and with children as well. And when we break out today, will be, maybe some of you have seen this already, it's called the Rose, Bud, and Thorn activity. And what you'll do in your breakout rooms when you get there is first your rows. So tell us something positive about yourself or worthy of celebration. It can be personal, it can be professional. That's really up to you, what you feel like sharing today. Second, your bud, something that you're looking forward to in the next hour or so in this session. And then three, what might you need help with? What's your thorn? What might you need help with in taking care of your own self right now? So we will, let's see, we have 25. So I would say 5 breakout rooms would be great, Jean. And we will broadcast the directions again if you can't exactly remember what what you're supposed to do when you get there, but you'll be sharing with one another your rose, bud, and thorn. If you take about 1 minute for each of you to do that, we should be in breakout rooms for about the next 6 minutes. And also with that activity, I really wanted you to be able to take that and run with it. Even with the youngest of students that you teach, they can definitely begin to express some of those, what they're excited about, what they, what something that happened that they may want to celebrate in their own little mind. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to go back to where we were. And we're going to take just a moment of a mindset moment or a mindful moment here for a couple of reasons. And within this 60 seconds, I just want you to start to take some nice deep breaths and really, as you see on the screen, just breathe. And as you do that, I want you to celebrate the fact that you took this time out for yourself today. Think about how you're going to dedicate this time to, number one, to yourself, but number two, to the students that you work with as well. And just begin to be mindful of where you are. So this is one part of our work together today, where if you would like to turn off your video, you can turn it off for the next 60 seconds. If you just like to bow your head, that's fine too. Close your eyes, or feel free to just leave the video on and listen. But for the next 60 seconds, we're going to pause and we're just going to take a mindful minute. So just take a nice deep breath in and exhale. Some of you may be familiar with that square breathing, where we, take that big deep inhale, exhale, and inhale again. And I just want you to be present. Maybe you can focus on something that you see or something that you hear, maybe something that you smell if you have a candle burning, or your dinner might be in the oven already. Something you can touch. Begin to feel how your body feels. If you've had a stressful day, you may feel some tightness in some certain places, and I want you to see if you can let that go and just relax a little bit. At the same time, you may have some thoughts that are racing in your mind that you need to rid of right now too, and just see if you can kind of create a blank space behind your eyes just for a minute and reset and refocus. Again, thinking about how you're dedicating this time to yourself and the little ones that you work with. Let's take about 10 seconds to continue to focus on your breathing. You can deepen the inhale and lengthen the time of the exhale. And then just carefully open your eyes and bring your cameras back on. And I invite you, if you'd like to in the chat, share a word that describes the students that you work with in the chat below that you're dedicating your work to. So besides dedicating your work today to yourself, which I congratulate you for, we're also thinking about our students as well. Precious, happiness. Oh, you guys melt my heart. Loving. Yes. We are. I remember working in, I worked in preschool for 4 or 5 years in Hamden for a while. And it's definitely a time that I have not forgot at all. Energetic, adorable, innocent. Yes. Capable. Love it, Julie. Energetic for sure, right? Don't you wish you had that much energy, especially at the end of the day? Curious. Look at all these words. Great. Thank you so much for sharing those words. Those are great. I can see what you were thinking during that mindful moment. And I wanted you to do that for a couple of reasons. Most of you, I'm sure, have come from a very stressful day. So having that time to decompress is really important. To kind of take the day and put it aside and just be present and be mindful from, my dog scared me, excuse me, be mindful of where you are, and just be present. So in this next slide here, you're going to see a Jamboard. Now, some of you may be familiar with Jamboard and some of you may not. Jean is going to share the link to the Jamboard in the chat. And what you're going to do there is you're going to take a sticky note, and Jean put a nice little arrow in there for us. And you're going to answer what is self-care. It can be a word, it can be a phrase, however you want to share what self-care is for you. That's what you'll do on that jam. Excuse me while I mute myself and take care of this dog while you do the jam. I am in agreement with so much of this. A cup of tea, yes, me too. Knitting has been coming up a lot lately. I love it. Exercise for sure. Tub, aromatherapy. I know I've been taking time, especially because now the weather is colder, to just try to take, even if it's just 10 minutes of like taking a bath and just putting some calming music on, and just giving myself, the phone is not in the room, and just giving myself that time to really just sit and be, kind of like we just took that 60 seconds to ourselves too. Mindfulness for sure. Time at the end of the day, yeah. All of this is great. Healthy eating and adequate sleep. Awesome. Compassion. So compassion for myself during anxious moments. I'm going to actually talk a little bit about that as we get a little deeper into the presentation, and about how important that is. I see some of your favorite Netflix shows. Getting rid of clutter, I have to say that's very soothing to me too, when I see an organized space. Thank you for that as well. Some great, really great answers. Okay. I'm gonna reshare here back to our presentation. It's always nice to see someone who some common interests too as we proceed through. So as you saw on your jam, there are different types of self-care. Some can be physical. I saw exercise and yoga. Some can be social. I know right now we're not getting together with friends as in the physical sense, but maybe you have some Zoom wine nights or whatever you may have. Mental self-care, spiritual and emotional as well. Is there anything that you have done, and we'll do this in a whole group here, that you have that's been helpful for you in order to create that time for your self-care that you put on that jam? Anything that you would like to share? You can chat, you can unmute, whatever you're more comfortable with.
I initially started when we went to all Zoom, and being used to going into like classroom after classroom after classroom after classroom across the state. Now I'm sitting in a chair all day. I had started to set my alarm for the same time every day so that I could get up, stretch, and just walk, even if it was walking inside the house. And then I realized that's not going to work. So every morning, what does work, what I found works for me, is that I go through my calendar to take a look at what's going to happen that day. And I set my alarm, and I make sure that no matter what during that time, it's just for me, whether it's walking, whether it's stretching, whether it's going outside, just getting that crisp air, but just ensuring that time is not interrupted by anything.
Mhm. And that's hard. That's hard to do, for sure. And I know that I've done something similar, Julie, where, now because the day is so packed, and even though I'm in one place, I'm in this room for for most of my day now, which is very different for me. But I can get very distracted when I try to take a moment during the day. But that I've been waking up an hour earlier and making sure I'm getting my exercise in and that I'm moving. Just so it can set the tone for my day as well, and really trying to carve out just an extra 10 minutes before bed too. I really enjoy reading, so I try to wind down before I'm completely exhausted, so I have 10 minutes of that time. Otherwise I'll lay down and fall right to sleep, or taking that 10-minute just bath at the end of the day as well. So beginning and ending my day, kind of sandwiching or bookending my day with those activities has been helpful for me. Thank you for sharing.
I found meditation is really helpful, and I saw somebody put the Calm app. 10% Happier app also has free 6 months for teachers. They've both been really great. I try to start my morning with one of the two.
Great, thank you. I think in the resources at the end of this, I have Headspace, which is right now free for educators as well. So if you do, and I believe it does have like an intro to meditation. So if you're new to meditation and it's something that you're really interested in, it starts you off slow, because I know if you sit down and you try to meditate for 15 minutes your first time, it's going to be really overwhelming and very difficult. But if we start with a shorter amount of time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, that it would be a little bit easier to get through. Okay. We know that working with students, your young students with special needs, or just young students in general, that they need a lot of support, right? So we have challenging days. The special ed teacher in me, really wanted to get this message out to you, that even students with special needs can be stressful, but educating them is just, extra rewarding as well. Try to listen, without judgment, to your students and your parents of their students, and try to put yourself in their shoes to create some empathy, and is the same way that you're going to be kind to yourself. And I love that someone put that on our jam. Is to be kind to and listen to others at the same time, even if our patience is really being tried on any given day during the current. So I have a quick video here on teacher burnout. I'm going to share with you. I do find that it's been really challenging, and that our current times have really lent more to teacher burnout than even before, when it was difficult before, and teacher burnout was a thing before, but now with the given times, it's become even more prevalent. So just want to share a quick video with you, and if you cannot see or hear, Jean, if you could just let me know, we will I'll fix that for you.
Yeah, schools are stressful. I mean, there's a lot going on, the demands of a teacher these days. As a leader, I'm very aware of, the threshold, that breaking point, the burnout, and, the sustainability of a teacher it's very delicate.
Education as a profession is basically the only social service that doesn't require, as part of its credentialing or ongoing credentialing process, some sort of way to process stress and trauma. Most police, fire, EMT agencies, if there's a death or a major traumatic event, they're at least required to do a couple hours of therapy to jump back on their rigs or get their gun and their badge back. Educators are expected to go for as long as 30 or 35 years with absolutely nothing to help us process stress and trauma. And we hold a lot of vicarious trauma for the students and families that we serve.
What's burnout? It's inability to deal with the stress, because the tolerance level has been exceeded. We're dealing with all the forces at work in a public school. It's a lot of stress, anxiety, and chaos that's coming at them, a lot of energy coming at them every day. And I think mindfulness gives us a force field that helps them take that in, but not let it affect them in a negative way. It helps them deal with it in a more healthy and kind of patient manner.
So one thing I want you to keep in mind with what you just saw in that video was made pre-COVID. So when we think now about teacher burnout, and we think about educators and in our world today and what we're going through, and that in our students, as little as they may be, trauma, so little t trauma, even if it's not that big traumatic experience, but what we're going through right now is a traumatic experience. This is a pandemic, and this is something that we have never lived through before, and that many people that we know have never lived through before. So we want to make sure that we take some time to and be empathetic with ourselves, that we're going through this, and that we need to really focus more than ever before on being kind to ourselves and supporting one another. So the people that you work with, the other related service providers, the other early childhood educators that you work with, how can you support one another? So when you create that self-care routine today, how can you keep one another accountable to fulfilling that need that is ever so important? Going back to my Here we go. So for those of you that know about Maslow and Bloom, so if Maslow had really talked a lot about how if we do not have our basic needs met, that we're not going to be, open for learning. Everything comes from our basic needs. And Bloom talked about how students learn. So if we don't make sure that we put our basic needs first, our students are not going to be ready to learn. But I'll tell you something, if you don't put your own needs and your own self-care first, you won't be able to do that either. So if you're coming to school stressed out, and you've got so much on your mind, and you have all of these crazy thoughts going on in your mind, maybe that meditation in the morning will help. Maybe getting your body moving will help. Maybe stepping outside and getting some fresh air will help. All of these, watching Schitt's Creek may help, right? So all of these things that you need to do for you that will help you be there for your students. So you cannot pour from an empty cup, so we really need to take care of yourself first. And I know as educators, we a lot of the time we think about our students first, or some of us that have families at home, we think of our families first, right? So it's really time for us to take a step back and put ourselves first, so we can be there for our students, so we can be there for our families too. This dog is very noisy today. I guess he wants to meet you. So here are our 5, these are just Claudia's top 5 tips for self-care. And while I'm giving these tips to you, I want you to think about how can you, even at the early age of the students that you work with, how can you teach these tips to your students, it should say, not to your staff, but to your students. All right, so tip number 1, take time for yourself. Again, it's going to look different for everyone that's here, right? So Julie needs to get up and she needs to pick up her weights and walk around the house. And someone else may need to take a bath, and someone else may practice yoga. Someone else may need that aromatherapy at night. But it's important that you take that time for something that fills your cup. It's going to, again, look different for everyone. But take that me moment, recharge, reset. You may need to do it, right after work so you can get through your night. You may need to do it in the morning so you can get through your day, whatever works best for you. But I want you to think about the analogy of stopping at the gas station to fill up your tank. If you kept driving your car and driving your car and driving your car and you never put gas in it, what would happen? It would, the car would die. So I want you to think about that, same here. So my phone, you can't really, well, you can see, right? It's charging. What if I didn't charge my phone? It would die, and I wouldn't be able to, it would run out of gas, or it would run out of battery charge. So I want you to think about what that is going to be for you to keep yourself running well. Sleep, right? I think eating well and sleep did come up on our Jamboard, and that's really important too. During that mindful moment, I did have you take a little bit of a senses break where I asked you to think about something you could see, something you could hear, and I'm just, there we go. I'm gonna ask my son for help with this barking dog. But using that senses break can definitely help during that time. Embrace movement, like Julie said, get outside. It's chilly, but you can still feel that sun when you don't have a really windy day, and that vitamin D is really helpful as well. Tip 2, communicate with someone that you trust. So again, if you can help support one another with your own self-care, that's amazing. People in your buildings that you work in, that's great too. But find those people who are supportive. And maybe that's an online forum right now. Maybe there's an early childhood self-care forum, right, that's going on right now that you could join, or teachers, or just any self-care in general, if that's really what you really need to focus on right now. Be yourself and talk openly, because that will be so much more helpful for the people that are supporting you. So definitely ask for support from, whether it be peers, whether it be professional support if you need it, any support in the community, but please do not be afraid to ask for help, because we all do need that during this time. Tip number 3 would be to find acceptance and feed your soul. So again, that can look different for everybody, but you need to accept that you cannot fix everything, and you also need to accept that you cannot do everything in one given day, right? So we at CREC talk a lot about if you were juggling, and we have an article, and I'll give it to you, Jean. You already have it, I'm sure. If you were juggling glass balls and plastic balls, right, the plastic balls would fall and nothing would happen to them. But if you drop the glass balls, they'll break and shatter. So during your day, what you should really be focusing on are those glass balls, because those are the ones you need to keep up and running, right? You need to have food on the table for yourself or your family, right? Does your house need to be clean? Not necessarily. That's probably a plastic ball, because that the dirt on the floor will be there tomorrow and everyone will live through it. But really focus on those glass balls. And I do find myself really embracing this, maybe to an extreme, because the other day I found myself walking around and going, okay, glass balls, because I was overwhelmed with everything that needed to be done. And in my mind, I needed to literally separate, okay, Claudia, what do you have to do right now? And what is an okay if I do it later activity? And it helped, it really did help. So if you can embrace that mindset, it will really help. Just focus on your glass balls right now, because everything else will be there. Accept that there are limits on what you can do in any one given day, and get rid of trying to do everything perfect, right? We're all human, we all have flaws. And when something happens and it doesn't go right, accept it, right? Accept it, give yourself some compassion, give yourself some empathy, and move on. Easier said than done, I should say. Number 4, use positive self-talk. So this can be during meditation. This can be just the way that you speak to yourself in your own mind. But I want you to think about how you would talk to your best friend. So you would never, use condescending words to your best friend, right? You would talk to them, well, it's okay that you forgot to do that. It's really no big deal. Like, just do it later, or no, it's all right, But sometimes we don't use that we don't give ourselves that empathy, right? I can't believe you forgot that. How could you possibly forget that? I'm so stupid. I'm so forgetful. I'm so this. And I see you smiling and nodding, but it is true. It's true. But don't use those words to yourself that you wouldn't use to your best friend. I will put in the chat later. I just found this actually today, and if you're a podcast user, it is called The Happiness Lab, and the episode that really stood out to me is called, hold on, I'm gonna find it. I'll put it in the chat in case you forget. Dump your inner drill sergeant, right? So that voice inside you that says, do it now, yells at you, makes you be, just like this, but to get rid of that inner drill sergeant and be more kind to yourself, and be empathetic. So I'll put that in the chat a little bit later. Just found it today, so I didn't have time to put it in the presentation, but I did want to share that with you. And tip 5, be consistent, right? So you want to be consistent with your self-care. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, if it's 10 minutes every other day, if it's I'm going to watch one episode of Schitt's Creek every night before I go to bed, that's going to be me time. I'm not going to let anything get in the way with that. And just make sure that it's simple, right? Because we do need to balance the things that we do, our glass balls, with our self-care, right? So those plastic balls, they can go, but we do have to balance hanging on to those, juggling those glass balls, and our self-care for ourselves as well. And be flexible with yourself, right? So if I oversleep in the morning and I don't get my my exercise in, then maybe this is a rest day that I had planned later in the week, or maybe this is I do some stretching before I go to bed. But be flexible with yourself at the same time as being as consistent as you can. All right, so we're going to start to think about what that routine is going to look like for you. Again, it's going to be very individual. Everybody's activities will look different. The way you set this up will look different. But here's how we'll do this. We'll first list the things that you actually like to do. So it could come from the Jamboard, or it can come from a list I'll show you in just a second. You're going to brainstorm so you can make the most out of the time that you have. Most of us, especially right now, don't have a lot of it. So maybe it's something where you do a longer self-care routine on the weekend, right? And you have something to look forward to, and you do just little small 5-minute snippets throughout the week. I want you to make sure that you're thinking about ways you can set goals to hold yourself accountable. And then, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, how are you going to evaluate if this self-care routine is working for you? And how, if not, how will you adjust it to make it work better? And even if it is working, how can you make it work better? So step 1, when you think about listing, here are just some examples and ideas. Again, we have a lot of great ideas on the Jamboard that you had come up with, but here are some more, and I'll bring this slide back in a little bit. Here is one template of what a self-care plan can look like. Again, it does not, this one is, a daily. Yours could be weekly. Yours could be, look like a month calendar. And I'm going to check off 10 of these this month. Or if it's a week-long calendar, I'm going to make sure I do 5 of my favorite things this week before I get to Saturday or Sunday. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a daily, but here is a daily. And then I did put some other templates here. I'm probably going to have to reshare. Hold on. Some other templates here, and I can put this in the chat as well. But there were, I liked this because there were also, and Julie and I were having a conversation about this before, there are positive and then there are negatives, right? So we can definitely indulge in self-care sometimes that isn't helping us, but that is hurting us. Like, I'm going to have a little bit more wine than I should have, or I'm going to eat a little bit more chocolate than I should have, and then it makes me feel worse when I'm done. So it's definitely, it can go either way. But in here, I loved this, how it has areas of physical self-care and then current practices or practices that you may want to try. I loved that. So again, I'll put this in the chat, but I loved this. Emergency self-care tools, like, so in the moment when you're having that sense of overwhelm or something really happens, what are you going to do in that given moment? And what do I want to avoid, which is almost just as important sometimes, right? So I'm going to avoid going to, to the refrigerator, or I'm going to avoid yelling and screaming. I'm going to avoid all of these, these habits that come out of that overwhelm and that anxiety and that stress.
And I think,
talk to. Go ahead, Julie.
I think what's important too is you're sharing a lot of great resources with us. I think it's important. Research shows that if you actually stop and take the time to go through and complete or write something down, like for example, journaling, you're more likely to actually employ these strategies when you need to. So a lot of times we're like, hey, this is great information. Okay. But actually taking the time to go through them and kind of just jot down, whether it's on a computer or jot down, even on sticky notes, you're far more likely to actually use it when you need it and then benefit from it. So I'll give you an example like breathing. I know how to breathe. But literally, if I stop and do like the box breathing, and I do it and I set my timer, and by the time it's done, I'm like, wow, it made a difference. So it's granting yourself the time to go through and figure out what works for you, write it down, keep track of it so that you will actually use it when you need it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And again, if those of you that are Apple Watch users, you have the breathing app, right? Where it actually has that, where it expands and comes down. I love using mine for that, for that too. Thank you, Mia. So don't, anything that would work in that way. But again, even just visualizing the square breathing, like Julie was talking about, in for 5, out for 5, in for 5, out for 5, and creating that. But I will drop that link in the chat. But actually, what what Julie was talking about is what I really want you to focus on for the next, what time is it? It's 4:15 already. So for the next 5 or so minutes, what I want you to do is, So what I want you to do is think about your self-care routine. Just give me a second to drop that link in the chat if you wanted to look at those templates as well. But I really want you to have at least the beginnings of a draft right now, either in a Google Doc or take out your pen and paper and begin to carve out what this self-care routine is going to look like for you, right? Do you want a daily one like this? Do you want do you want a weekly? Do you want a monthly that looks more like a calendar? Do you want it to look like what it looks like on those other sheets? So start thinking about that. And I'm going to give you till about 4:20 to actually start writing it down or typing it out. Any questions about that? I'm going to actually put that in the chat now. So go ahead and just start your writing. Getting that link for you guys now. So keep in mind, how much time you have. Everybody's day looks different. Is it better to carve out some time in the morning? Is it better to carve out some time at night? Is it good to stop in the middle of your day? How is the only way this is going to work is if you park your car on the way home from your school building in a desolate parking lot and meditate for 5 minutes before you walk into your house, right? Because that's what when my son was really little and I was going from my classroom home. That was the only time that I really had before he fell asleep, in which I was so tired anyway that I couldn't, so that is reality. So whatever is going to work for you, maybe, it is tough to wake up in the morning, but maybe that's the only time you're gonna be able to sit with your cup of coffee and do whatever that is self-care for you. It could be something like, planning out a healthy meal for that night, because you know that when you come home and you're stressed out from work and there's nothing planned or nothing prepared, that you're going to reach for, whatever is easy, because I've been in that situation many of times as well. Okay, so how are they coming along? Okay. Good. Again, I'm so happy that you are all here and really taking the time to do this for yourself. A lot of people have this vision of self-care that is, I have to sit in the bath, or I have to, get a massage, or I have to, listen to this soothing music. But really, something like decluttering, right? So listening or reading through affirmations. I have this, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jen Sincero. She wrote, "You are a badass," and I have this calendar, "You are a badass" calendar. And so when I sit down at my desk every morning, I peel off, and every day I have a daily affirmation. So that's one thing that I've done that actually helps me if I wake up and I'm rushed, or I'm even just in a cranky mood for whatever happened in the morning. That morning I have this, it literally takes me 30 seconds, but it's that mindful moment, and it kind of does, if I am in that negative mindset, it does sometimes help to flip it for me.
I
Okay,
have
good.
one that I have to share with everybody. You
Yes,
gotta
please.
see this. So this is when you're talking about negativity, right? And you're just, So this was purchased for me by someone. It is a happy pill. And I highly recommend it. Can be used in the classroom because when you need to be happy,
Love it.
and it just keeps going and it keeps going. I mean, you can't help but laugh.
You can't, that is perfect, right?
You can't help but laugh. So it, it's actually right near my desk, right near my laptop.
Love it.
It's just,
Love
you
it.
can get them on Amazon, happy pills.
I think the kids would love that, wouldn't they? If one of them, even if one of them gets in a negative moment, well, it sounds like you need your happy pill. I can see myself.
And everybody stops and just starts laughing. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's a student. Hey kids, doesn't it sound like so-and-so needs their happy pill? Let's go at it. Yes. Or you could use it as modeling, right? It sounds like Miss Elbridge needs her happy pill right now. Right? It's great modeling though. Okay, so the next step will be for all of you to go back into your breakout rooms for the next 5 minutes before we begin to wrap up. And what you'll do is, how will you now take, and I know that this self-care routine that you're devising may not be completed in its entirety right now, but how will you take this and how will you share it or model it with your students, right? We just had a really good example with that happy pill about how you could model it, but this self-care routine that you've created, how will you share it and model it with them? Because now you're taking this time for your own self-care and get this time to fill up your own cup. Well, it's just as important for them to do the same thing. So how will you now take what you have learned and what you've created and share it or model it? Sentence, by the look on your face when you came back.
Well, we were having this interesting conversation about, and maybe I should just bring it up, but a little boy whose mom had COVID who came to daycare and ended up having COVID, and so they had to quarantine right before Christmas. And it's like, why didn't they keep him at home? And then we got cut off. So that's where we were. I don't know.
A very
The
good question.
conclusion of that part is that
Yeah.
the mom tested positive, said, I will come. Well, they didn't know the mom was positive, maybe. I think that's what it was. They had all tested at the same time. Moms came back, but mom was pretty sure she had it, called the school nurse and said, do you want me to come pick them up? And she said, no, don't worry about it. It's a contact of a contact. Because that's the policy. The school nurse was like, it's the contact of, because the little boy we would have been contacts of the contact if mom was positive, but then he ended up being positive as well. So then we were all contacts. So then we were all sent home and got out of quarantine on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
So we got it cut off right in the middle. And I'm like, what?
I know, it was like a cliffhanger. Sorry.
So I'm glad you got to finish.
But we're all okay. None of us contracted it. We all wear a mask. That's where this all kind of came from. We had our masks and our social distancing at school, and we were all fine. Kids were all fine. He's fine now. Mom's fine now. Everything's good. Now it's other cases that have us closed.
I'm very happy that you were taking care of yourselves.
Yes, thankfully. The masks make a big difference because someone else that was around him did not have a mask all the time and they got COVID.
Okay.
So clearly it does.
Wear your masks,
work.
people.
Yeah.
I did read an article today, just to throw this out. I can't remember where it was, but where a lot of people, including Biden, are now starting to wear 2 masks for more protection. Just throwing that out.
I have to say a lot of us at school have started wearing 2 masks. We're in the little pocket of Connecticut that's a hot mess right now.
Okay.
So
Just throwing that out.
Well, hopefully the time spent today creating your self-care routine and then thinking about how you're going to fill your own cup and then teach your youngest ones that we have here to fill their own cup as well and be able to model that for us. I really appreciate your time here today. I appreciate the time that you took for yourselves. And that is time really well spent. So congratulations to everybody today. Very nice meeting you. And I don't know, is there anything else that we need to have to say before we hop off?
I just put something real quick in the chat that we had talked about. If you have an opportunity to look at Tools of the Mind, which is an instructional approach, and it teaches kids how to plan. It works on executive function, and we've used it so that in addition to kids planning what their play is going to look like and making a plan for play, you can use it for, let's make a plan for self-care. What helps make my body calm? What am I going to use? So I encourage anyone, go check it out. Tools of the
I
Mind.
like that bridge. I like that. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Be well, be healthy, stay safe.
Wear those 2 masks.
Wash your hands.